Hey, Jerry.
Hey, J-Rob.
You know what time it is?
I do know what time it is.
What time is it?
It's time for Jerry and J-Rob cover it all.
Oh, man, we're still live. We're still in the air. Still making it happen.
Still kicking.
For all 14 of you, we are hard charged.
14, we came up.
We came up 1.5. I think one was deceased. They just left their podcast on.
Oh, yeah.
So either way, we're still going to make it happen. How you doing?
Fantastic.
Yeah?
Yep. I am on track and feeling great.
Tell me about that.
Some of our viewers have heard this before, and maybe some of them have not, but I struggle with my weight, and so I have a tendency to do well for short periods of time and then fall back into my habits of comfort and do what is easy, what is known, what is comfortable, and so I struggle with my weight.
Okay.
But as of this moment, I am on track with my plan, my program, and my inflammation is down. My clothes are fitting a little bit better, and I'm feeling great.
Very good. So for those who don't know, you've been on this journey for a while, and you have lost. I mean, at one point, I think about 100 pounds. It's quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's pretty fantastic. And then, even though you've been on it for a while, I don't think you've ever just flat out gave up. You've had some rocks, some obstacles, some things that maybe you stumbled over, but you haven't just completely disavowed and set them out.
That's true.
That I know of.
And I think if I ever get to that place, it's going to be bad. And I really have so much going on in life that I can't allow myself to get to that place again.
Okay.
With the church, this podcast,
Right.
my family, my granddaughter, and everything that's going on. I have to make it. I got to do it.
Well, I think that kind of rolls into our topic today, and it's kind of a conglomerate of a few different items, which most of our shows are.
Yeah.
But we want to discuss a little bit about fear, anxiety, and some of the acute symptoms of it. Not medically speaking. So, tell me what typically happens, what changes do you see in yourself when something kind of overtakes you or causes you some fear? Because I think you're a pastor.
Right.
Which means you're not a human, right?
No, I got no belly button and chrome toenails.
Chrome toenails, right?
So.
Right. So you have the same problems, the same emotions, the same things that everybody else does. Maybe
Right.
you probably have a little bit better way of dealing with most things, and you do a better job of it because people depend on you, and because you have a better relationship with God than many do. But what happens in Jerry's world when something comes down?
So, for sure, I lean on my relationship with the Lord pretty heavily during those times. But, for instance, something comes into my world that's maybe unexpected, unplanned, something I really don't want to deal with, whatever the case may be, right? And it causes me to have some fear, maybe some anxiety, fear of the unknown, maybe an anxiety about how to deal with the situation or make something happen, right? And so I have to be very aware of myself. And when I say aware of myself, I have to know my own boundaries, my own limitations. I have to recognize that I don't know everything. And sometimes that's a shock to myself and to many others.
I don't know what to say right
I told I told my wife and kids the other day. I said, I know y'all think I am, but I'm not Superman. I can't lift as much as I used to.
So give me an
Back as a
example
younger man.
of like a manifestation of a fear, anxiety. What happens to you physically? What do you see or notice that occurs?
Well, so it can cause me to not think clearly, begin to analyze situations from a position of fear. And so rather than saying, all right, this is going to be a rational conclusion, I start running through scenarios in my head. I wish that I could say that I have all faith and could just give it to God every single time something came. But, most of the time that comes later. My initial impact is, okay, how am I going to handle this? What am I
Right.
going to do? What is this going to look like?
Right.
And then I begin to worry about the outcome if it's going to be negative,
Right.
especially if it's leaning that direction. And one of my bad habits is leaning on food for comfort in those situations.
Yep.
And so that's a big struggle for me.
Right.
Trying to deal with my emotions at the end of a fork has not been very productive. Although in the moment, I feel good about it.
Right.
But several pounds down the road, doesn't feel so well.
Right. And I think we even feel justified when I used to be in the same situation. Any kind of major event, any kind of negative thing that occurred in life, food was a justification. It's like, I can go. This will make me feel better. It's okay.
Yeah.
I've got enough problems. This is okay. And truth is, for people that are struggling, it's not okay, right? Because we're just falling down again. We're just falling down again, falling down again. So you mentioned some stuff like that, and when you had a message this morning about kind of giving it over to God, and something you said was, the first thing we do is, how can I fix this? And I think that is the first thought that everybody has. I know certainly for me,
Sure.
it's how can I fix this? And then we automatically go to the worst case mentally and decide if it's something that we can handle or not. Sometimes we think we can, sometimes we can't. Sometimes it puts us in a pretty dire strait. And I can think back, over times in my life where some pretty horrible things were taking place, and it's like, how do I deal with this? I don't know what to do. And it's funny because some of those extreme cases are what ended up pushing me back to God, right? And He uses those circumstances because I had to give it away and basically just ask for His help because I had no solutions. So as far as the manifestation of it, I can't even get the word out right now. The manifestation, anyway.
It's okay. We
What-
make up words
what-
on the Jerry
Yeah, that's right.
J-Rob show.
What it looked like was lack of sleep, under overeating. It looked like restlessness. It looked like poor body function. You're somewhere else because you've got
Yeah.
this problem going on. You can't deal with what's in front of you, at least not to your normal standards. And this is something that a lot of people, because I don't know if it's just because it's more prevalent now or more seen or known, but it seems like almost everyone has some kind of anxiety issue now. And where that comes from, I'm not quite sure, but it seems very prevalent in society. So all of these people walking around with fears of things that are maybe justified, maybe not justified, how are they getting through their day, And I can understand where that can be very problematic for folks.
Right, and I wanted to add to something you said just a moment ago. As talking about manifestations of maybe fear, maybe anxiety. Being in a constant state of irritation, being snappy. I had to apologize to somebody the other day because I snapped at them, and it didn't have anything to do with them, but I was irritated. Right, I was not comfortable in the situation with what was going on. So yeah, it can get us there. Yeah, definitely. It's a growing issue amongst humanity. How we deal, or have a difficulty rather, dealing with circumstances and issues of life. And, sometimes we find good and productive and healthy ways to deal with those things, and sometimes not.
Right.
And so when it comes to the bad ways that we tend to deal with those things, all it does is make the situation worse when we choose to deal with those things in a way that is unproductive, rather than seeking help. For instance, sometimes the situation requires that we put our pride aside, recognize that we can't do it, and certainly seek God. But maybe some of our listeners, they don't have a relationship with the Lord, and that's between them and Him. But asking someone for help,
Right.
just recognizing that we can't do it,
Right.
instead of trudging on in our inability.
Well, this is a good spot here, and this is kind of a controversial pastoral question.
Okay. I may or may not have an answer.
Okay. So some pastors would say, well, you should not be using any kind of medication related to mental health, and it's not necessary, or your faith or relationship with God is not strong enough, and that's the culprit and why you are using medications to take place of that. What would you say to somebody like that?
So that's actually a topic that I've had to deal with quite often, and as you well know, I've spoke on it to our own congregation. There are several instances in the Bible of God's people dealing with anxiety and depression. Having those things in our life doesn't. It always pains me when the first thing we jump to is, oh, well, you must not be right with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it can't possibly be that there might be a chemical imbalance, something physical might be going on, or just recognizing that we live in a body that is failing us every day. We live in an earth suit that unfortunately is wearing out. It gets sick, it hurts. So someone who lives in a constant state of pain, we would never, or sickness, we would never say to that person, well, you must be wrong with God because you're sick, you have, well, for instance, you have, and your family deal with cystic fibrosis.
Right.
So I, as your pastor, am not going to say, well, what you need to do is get right with the Lord.
Right.
No, God gave us doctors. God gave those doctors the wisdom to understand and know parts of the human body, and sometimes medication is necessary in order to help us to achieve healing, or at least to achieve the help that we need to get us in a better frame of mind so that we can participate in our own recovery.
Right. I think you touched on that this morning as well, because your family also has extreme medical issues. And does that mean that you don't have enough faith? Does that mean that you're not a good guy, or you're living outside of the will of God? No, I think it's there for a reason, because it's not a requirement, but it seems like many pastors that I know have an adversity in their life, like a significant adversity in their life. And I think it's for a couple of reasons. I think God puts it there so that they can relate to other people in similar circumstances, so that they can realize, what it feels like to have such an obstacle and have such an issue that you have to deal with, and that you become maybe more dependent upon God. It also gives you avenues to talk to people, and that is where I have seen and personally recognized that having CF has helped open doors for us to talk to people. Does it suck? Yes, it's terrible. It's a horrible thing to have to deal with. But because of that, we've been able to talk to people and reach people that we might not have ever known or reached, or what have you. So I think, I look at it as a blessing. it's changed our perspective. It's changed how we do things. We had a event yesterday that you showed up for, and I appreciate you being there. Where we were talking about health, and we talked about mindset and the relationship there. But the mindset, I acknowledge that we change based on a pivot, on an epiphany, or circumstance. Very rarely do we just change just to change. There's usually
absolutely.
an indicator there. And for us, that was CF. So if that had not happened, we probably kind of just would have been in the same boat doing the same old thing and just going down the river of life, doing nothing exciting, performing no major purpose in life other than to work and eat and pay payments and die. And that's it, right? But coming back to the topic, fear and anxiety, that's one of those things that, it happens. It happens. I know I told you what happens kind of to me when I see it, but then there's that delay, and I wish I didn't have the delay. And this is what I'm getting back to. So we have the delay of, what can I do now? I'm going to go fix this right now. I'm going to try to take care of this right now. I'm going to do whatever I can right now because it's my responsibility, versus pump the brakes. Let's just relax for a minute. Maybe let's talk it over with God. Maybe let's talk it over with a friend. Maybe let's talk it over with a circle of friends that know what they're doing, and get some good feedback and see what can be done from that point, versus moving into fear mode and making rather dire movements towards what you think is right. And then that's where things usually compound and get worse, right?
Right. And so I want to go back to something you said a moment ago when you were talking about us making changes in our lives. Usually doesn't happen just for the sake of happening. It usually only takes place when we get to an uncomfortable spot, a spot of pain, a spot where we're prodded to move and make a change. And so when we talk about circumstances and situations that bring fear and anxiety into our life, it may not be a bad thing,
right,
for those things to come. It's our failure to recognize the opportunity that they present, and that causes us to move within our own ability, our own sphere of influence, our own shell of comfort, and not recognize that this is an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for change, an opportunity to learn, whatever the case may be, and stay stuck there.
Right.
And that's where the problem comes in. That's where the fear and anxiety are unproductive.
Right. No, I 100% agree. And I think you end up regressing and making things much worse at that point. So that fear will always try to hold you back. And the best way to get around it, in my opinion, is to go through it. I think it's best to just, whatever you set your sights out to do, and we're talking about goals and things of that nature, just go do it. Don't let that fear put you in a box where you never get out. You never want to do it. You never want to realize some of those dreams and stuff that you've had. And ultimately, you might be doing something really great for somebody or somebody's else, and you're stuck in your spot.
Right, and so that speaks to a couple of things. There's the fear of failure, there's the fear of the negative, but sometimes we fail to recognize a fear of the positive.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, I have known people who have been of the mindset that they're going to operate in the mediocre, stay in the comfortable, and for fear that they might attain something great, and in doing so may have an expectation placed upon them. And so rather than grow and mature and step up, maybe into a place of leadership, or maybe into accomplishing something greater than what we previously thought possible, for fear that what's next after that? What will be expected of me? What will I have to accomplish then?
Right.
So a lot of people allow fear to keep them from doing great things.
It's true. I would say it would it's probably all, back up here, all great things that have been accomplished. There was probably a moment of fear beforehand, whether it was discovery, building something, making something, being somebody. Everybody has that moment of, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I don't put myself out there. Because the fear is what's going to happen. It's failure, and what does a failure look like? Is that an embarrassment? Is that um, you know rejection, dwindling of funds, losing friendships, family members? Where does that go? So and we're the best at talking ourselves out of doing stuff, right?
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
it's something we have that conversation all day long. But what I've learned is getting into action and just pushing for those things regardless. You will find that more often than not, you will get something out of it, even if you didn't fully achieve what you set out to do. You'll learn something, you'll gain something, another door will open, something else will happen that will propel you into something that's better than where you were.
Right. And so we talked a little bit about the manifestations of fear. Can you share an example with the audience of a time where maybe you faced some fear and anxiety, and you, rather than trying to get out of it, go around it, you work through it, and what did that look like? What did you accomplish from that?
One of the best examples I have is one time I assisted one of my very best friends in getting fired.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did something we should not have done, and even though I was not so involved with it, I was involved. It was my idea. It was my provocation that made it happen. If I had never said anything, it never would have occurred. So I felt responsible for it, for the entire event. So I don't want to get into the weeds about it, and there's people that got hurt over it, and as a consequence, I had been suspended from my job for a little bit, and also in the same breath got a very good friend of mine fired. Now, that's hard to deal with, right?
Right.
So unfortunately, when you get into a bind, especially when it's a pseudo government organization that you work for, they do an internal investigation. Well, that takes a month, 2 months, 3 months, however long. So you're just out there waiting. Like everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows it's not good, but you're kind of waiting to go to the guillotine, right?
Uh-huh.
And it just drags on forever. And that caused a lot of sleepless nights. I think that's part of the punishment as well, because they just want to make you just sweat, right? So a lot of sleepless nights. Well, it also showed up because, eating habits were not good. It was not, I was not doing well. At the time, I already had a broke foot, so that was having a hard time healing. And just how can I make this better? Well, I did some things. I tried to take responsibility for it, which is ultimately what I felt like I needed to do. But the end of it, the friend of mine also wanted to take responsibility, and he did, which is what kind of ended up getting us where we were. So at the end of the day, through negotiations, I was never in jeopardy of losing my job, but he got his job back. But during that time, this guy had been off work for a month. How was he going to pay his bills? So I took it upon myself, and I'm no hero, but I took it upon myself to pay him that month to come do stuff with me. And that was not charity. That was not anything special. I was privileged to be able to do that because I potentially could have ruined his life. And if that's all it cost me was a month of him getting paid, then that's the very least I could do, and he's well worth it. So the point is, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of issues, lots of worry. You just feel miserable. I think it takes years off your life when you worry like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, waking up at 2 a.m, staying up till the next day and that kind of stuff, and not knowing how to deal with stuff, and the embarrassment and the disposition you're in. So what did I do at that time? That was a long time ago, but I did pray about it a lot and often. And at that time, I didn't have very healthy habits, so I'm sure I ate and did a bunch of other stuff that was physically unwell, but that's what happened.
And so you persevered.
We did persevere. The worst thing that could have happened did not happen, and we got through, and it worked out better than I probably could have planned.
But how often did you run that worst case scenario through your mind?
Every minute, every day.
Yeah.
Never stopped.
Yeah.
It never stopped. And that's just one example. These, like, you've probably got 1,000 of them, just like I do.
I think everybody does.
Right.
And, most of what we worry about and fear never comes to pass.
It's true.
Now, sometimes, it happens exactly the way we thought it was going to happen, and it's terrible, right? But most of the time it doesn't. And we've spent all this time, energy, the expression worry yourself sick, that's a thing.
Right.
You can actually do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, we worry ourselves sick, we're afraid, and at the end of the day, we're okay.
Yep.
We've made it through everything we've faced so far, and we're here.
Right.
So I want to give a couple of tips to our viewers.
Let's do it.
Whenever you find yourself in that situation where you are fearful about the outcome of a circumstance, or you're fearful of the unknown future, or what may happen tomorrow, the next day, 5 minutes from now, one thing that I have found that has helped me tremendously is that, of course, my walk with the Lord, but sometimes you have to ground yourself. And what I mean by that is when your mind starts to race and you begin to fear of the unknown, fear of the negative, fear of what might happen, I have found it tremendously helpful to stop and to remind myself that right now I'm okay. So what does that look like? Okay, I don't know if I'm going to make next month's rent. Okay, well, I can sit here and worry about it. I can let my mind race about it. Or I can say, okay, right now, rent's paid. And I know that I'm going to do everything that I can between now and then to get it done. But right now, I'm okay.
Right.
Say, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to buy groceries this week. Today, I'm eating. I'm feeding my family.
Right.
I'm going to leave tomorrow for the things of tomorrow. And I know that I'm going to wake up and do everything that I can to make it all happen again tomorrow. Of course, relying on the Lord and having the faith that I need to have. But in times where fear and anxiety have set in my mind, and I begin to worry, and I begin to run those scenarios through my head, and I begin to get all worked up about what might happen and what's this going to be like. Ground yourself. Come back to, where am I at now? Is everything okay now? Well, everything's okay. I'm alive. I'm breathing. I got clothes on.
Right.
There have been times in our life where, just in the past couple of years, at one point we thought we were going to lose the house.
Right.
And my wife, if she would begin to worry about it, or we begin to discuss it and work ourselves up about it, I said, look, today we're okay. Today we got a roof and four walls.
That's right.
So let's calm down. It'll be okay. And so that exercise has been tremendously helpful in helping us to overcome fear and anxiety.
Right. And I think once you get past the situation, you'll be able to look at it from years to come, look back at it and acknowledge you learned something, you got something out of it. Maybe it's something you would change for the future, but that there was some benefit, even though it didn't feel good, it wasn't comfortable, that you were able to do something with it and learn. Okay, sir. Well, what do you have else for today?
That's all I got.
Okay. Well, appreciate you guys checking in and listening to us. I'm not sure where we stand with YouTube right now. I'm going to try to upload a video and see what happens. But you know what? Hey, if we can pray for you, or if we can, do something for you, send us an email. It's at jerryandjbrobcoveredall@gmail.com. And if we can help you in any way, or if you've got a great story to tell, we'd love to hear it. And just send us a message there and we'll get back with you. So have a great week. We look forward to seeing you next week.
See you then.